I've always been kind of curious about this one. We got the Boss BF-2 flanger and the Boss HF-2 High-Band Flanger. Let's get right to the part that we're all here for. So hopefully you can hear it in the clips there, but the high band flanger is flanging in a higher range of frequencies than the regular BF2 flanger. Also, for the curious and thorough, my setup there was a Boss LS2 line selector up front, splitting the signal to each pedal. And then I recorded the clips with a BF2 on one channel and the HF2 on the other. So the recording is the exact same playing. I wanted to make this as apples to apples as possible. Also, it's hard to get a good overhead shot of this guy. It looks like it's been left out in the desert for a couple years. But it also kind of looks like it's the case for a lot of these that I'm seeing out there. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but fading paint plus white lettering is just not a good combination. So now that we know the what, we can talk about the why and the how, starting with how a flanger works. A flanger takes an input signal, delays it by an amount, which is varied back and forth by a low frequency oscillator, and then it mixes that delayed signal in with the original signal at the output. And if you've been paying attention to the videos on my channel, that should sound pretty familiar since it's also how I describe the way that a chorus works. The difference is while a chorus will vary its delay time between maybe 12 to 35 milliseconds, the BF2 has a delay time which runs from 1 to 13 milliseconds, somewhere in there. And it might not seem like that would make a huge difference. It's literally the blink of an eye, but let me show you why this sounds different from this, which sounds different from this. Middle A, that has a frequency of 440 hertz. You've probably seen A equals 440 in reference to tuning. That's the A that it's in reference to. There's 1,000 milliseconds in a second, and 1,000 divided by 440 equals 2.272727, repeating. So if we were to make a chart of the waveform of middle A, the time between each one of these crests would be 2.272727 repeating milliseconds. That's middle A. The low E string, that's about 175 hertz, and those are going to be 5.7 milliseconds apart. C on our high E string, that's our first note over 1,000 hertz, and its peaks are going to be a little less than a millisecond apart. If we make a rough graphical illustration of those frequencies that we just discovered and start delaying them by, let's just start with 1 millisecond. The delayed middle A is now nearly completely out of phase with the delayed version of itself. because 1 is almost exactly half of 2.27 repeating, meaning that those two opposite amplitudes are going to cancel each other out, so it'll act like a filter there. And if we creep the delay out a little bit more, we can hit a point where the middle A is starting to come back into alignment, but now that high E is out of phase with itself. And if we keep going, we'll hit another point where the low E is phased out and that the high E is back at full strength. And you can start to see what's happening here and why you can hear a sort of phantom pitch floating around when you use a flanger, especially on a noisy or distorted signal. That pattern of interference across the frequencies is known as a comb filter. Certain frequencies are going to get phased out as they're introduced to the delayed evil twin version of itself. And it's not just one filter moving around, it's a series of peaks and valleys or notches and hills that are going to kind of mathematically carve out frequencies. And it's not just the note that we're playing, not just the fundamental tone, it's anything mathematically or harmonically related. And we can use the resonance knob all the way on the right of the pedal here to make those peaks more pronounced and scrapey. Open up the pedals and you'll see the circuit layout is nearly identical. There are some slight variations in here, but the biggest one is this. BF-2 has an MN3207. That's a 1024 stage bucket brigade delay line. HF-2 has an MN4204. That's a 512 stage bucket brigade delay line. So half the stages, half the delay, which means we shift those frequencies up an octave. Voila, high band flanger. But just to be clear, when I say higher frequencies, I don't just mean the notes that we have our fingers on, because we also have all these overtones and harmonics up above the fundamental tone. A flanger will affect all of those as well, so you don't need to be playing super high notes to use a high band flanger. It's just able to sweep those higher frequencies, which can result in a sweeter or sometimes more subtle sound. With all of that in mind, here's the BF-2 and the HF-2 back to back one more time. That's all I really wanted to cover about this pedal, and I tried to include as many playing examples as possible so you can actually hear the difference, though I'm sure someone will complain that I talk too much. You know what? I also see a lot of people saying very matter-of-factly that the HF-2 is just a BF-2 with a different EQ circuit, or, and I love this, that it's a BF-2 with an octave pitch shifter built into it. And that's why we spend all this time talking and looking at illustrations, because if we can get to the bottom of how an effect works, then we can very clearly spot the differences without resorting to audio conspiracy theories. We can think about it pragmatically and scientifically, sort of. It's a BF-2 with a shorter delay, so the effect sweeps higher frequencies, which just might be your jam. And speaking of jams, here's a little jam using both pedals, because why the heck not? Probably my favorite thing about flangers is that if you listen for it and if you pay attention, every once in a while you'll hear a flanger effect in real life. There's this school that I sometimes help out at, and on my way into the school from the parking lot, there's this really loud exhaust fan from the cafeteria's kitchen. And as I walk towards it, I can hear a shift in the frequencies. And I talked to one of the school's science teachers about it, and after some experiments and drawing some stuff out, we came up with the hypothesis that it's probably the sound coming directly from the fan plus the interference from the sound bouncing off of the pavement, since those distances don't change at the same rate. Further experiments are certainly needed, but I think we're onto something. In the meantime, that's the Boss HF-2 high-band flanger. The flanger to play when your band is... yeah, never mind. Hey, I hope that was helpful. A little departure from what we normally do here, but I wanted to get to the bottom of this once and for all. And if you found it helpful, a little bit fun, a little bit entertaining, please make sure you're subscribed and come back for more. I'll catch you on the next one.